Hi, I'm Ms. Kennedy and I'm in my kitchen today exploring trees and plants. And often when we think of trees, we think of them being evergreen or deciduous. A deciduous tree is a tree that loses its leaves in the autumn. Baby teeth are deciduous teeth. So when we think about trees that are evergreen, often we think about trees that have cones and needle leaves. But there's a better way of thinking about trees. Before we think about whether they're evergreen or deciduous, we need to take a look at the leaves first. So these are leaves that are needle leaves, like a pine tree. And let me see, but here, these are leaves that are called broadleaf leaves. What people think of as regular leaves. But needle leaves can also be what are called scaly. So these are leaves from an Italian cypress tree. And Italian cypresses are evergreen, but those aren't needles like you would see on a pine tree. See the difference? So these are both evergreen trees. Let me show you something else. These are simple, broad leaves. You see how it's a simple leaf shape? You could draw that with two curved lines and a line down the middle. This is an evergreen tree. It's a lemon tree. And if you have a lemon tree or an orange tree in your yard or your neighborhood, take a look at those leaves. Those leaves stay on the tree all through the winter. Most citrus is an evergreen, even though they have broadleaf leaves. Interesting. I want to tell you about another thing, though. I didn't learn about this until I was a grown-up. There are needle leaf trees that are deciduous, that lose their needles every year. And we're really lucky to live in the Stockton-Lodi Central Valley area because we have examples of these trees. This is a dawn redwood tree in autumn. Dawn redwoods are redwoods, so they have needle leaves, but they are deciduous. So in the autumn, they turn golden brown, the leaves turn golden brown, and then they do drop off. The first time I saw one of these in autumn, I thought the tree was dying. And there are great examples of dawn redwood trees by Lodi Lake, on the west edge of Lodi Lake. I think there's about 6 of them standing nice and tall. Also, on the campus of San Joaquin Delta College, there are several examples of dawn redwood, and I believe at the University of the Pacific. What's cool about these trees, they thought they were extinct until 1947, when some of them were discovered in rural China. And seeds were brought to different arboretums, places where they study and raise trees, and they were able to grow these dawn redwoods. So these are really cool. I really like these trees. You can see them up by Lodi Lake. So this is a branch from an oak tree. And the leaves on an oak tree, well, this kind of oak tree, are called lobed. Do you see how they have those round sections on them like an earlobe? So this is a lobed tree. And another way that you would look at the leaf is you would see if it's fuzzy or shiny. So this leaf is very fuzzy on both sides. So that is a lobed leaf. So the lemon tree had a simple leaf. This is a lobed leaf. This is from my Japanese maple. These leaves are called palmate. Like a palm. Do you see how it's sort of like a hand? And then here are the seeds growing. These are called samaras, these seeds. And when they are ready to start growing trees, they will fall off the tree and they kind of fly away. These wings on them help them move around. And this is also from a deciduous tree, a tree that loses its leaves. And I'm going to show you, this is from a silk tree. Some people call them pink mimosas. They put out very fragrant, spidery pink flowers. I'm going to break this piece off. This is actually one leaf. This is called a compound leaf. Kind of like a compound word where you put two words together to make one word, like nobody, nobody. So these are called the leaflets. And this is a small leaf from the tree. The leaflets can, I think, go up to about 13 of them. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on this one. And it was going to grow some more. So that is a compound leaf. This puts out a lot of mess that I have to clean up. So those are some examples of broadleaf trees, and I showed you some example of needle-leaved trees. And I want to show you some cones from needle-leaved trees. So I showed you this cone, yes. So this cone is from a tree that is called a gray pine. We have a lot of these in the Central Valley. They're used often for landscape trees in yards and parks. And while this is a very large cone, it's pretty lightweight. And it would be hanging from the tree like this. And I can use my tree guides to help me identify trees by their cones. So this is a gray pine. Ooh. This is from a coulter pine. And again, it would be growing from the tree like this. This cone is much heavier than this one. And these can get much bigger than this. This is pretty heavy. These trees have actually hurt people when they've fallen from trees. They've damaged cars because they're heavy and they fall from a great distance. So people who live with a coulter pine tree, pay attention to when the cones are dropping. And you can see how some resin has collected on the tips of the leaves on the cone. So a coulter pine. If you see a tree that has cones like this, you know that it is a sugar pine. Now this is interesting. This cone weighs a lot less than this cone. This cone is much heavier, although this one seems much bigger. And if you've ever eaten pine nuts come from in there. These things get broken off and the pine nuts are actually in there. Sugar pine, you usually don't eat the nuts from the sugar pine. So that's pretty big, isn't it? Now you've heard about California redwoods and that California redwoods are very large. This is a cone from a California redwood. It's pretty small, isn't it? It's hard to believe that such a giant tree can grow out of something so small. I collected this specimen probably about 4 years ago, but do you see how it still hangs on to where the leaves were? It just stays right there. It is persistent. It stays on there. The gray pine does not. It falls off. But the redwood stays on its stem. Okay, so we've taken a look at some pine cones. Oh, I should say cones. We've taken a look at different kinds of leaves. I want to show you something about how plants drink. So actually, also how they get nutrients, because this is really a good example. So 6 days ago, I bought 3 carnations. They all looked pretty much the same when I bought them. This carnation I put in water with some flower food. So it stayed pretty fresh for almost a week. These carnations, though, I put in water with food coloring so I could see how the food coloring went up and to see the water in there. So, can you see where some of the green food coloring has gone through the leaves here? And actually, some of the petals have green food coloring and some of them have red because I split this. I put half of the stem in red food coloring and half in green food coloring. But can you see how some of that red food coloring is coming up into the petals? You can also see that the flowers that did not get flower food have faded. Oh, and there. Can you see the green on the edge of the petal there? And you can try this with a flower at home. You can put it in water. You can give it some flower food too and put some food coloring in there and see how the food coloring colors the flower. I also have some celery that I have put in water with food coloring. I'm going to trim the end of it in hopes that you can see a little bit better. So I put this in some water with red food coloring, and can you see how that stalk of celery has taken the water up through the stalk? Kind of like a straw. In fact, the food coloring, it wasn't drinking until I cut off this end, and then the celery stalk started drinking up that water. And here I put half of the celery stalk in red food coloring and half in green. So can you see that? Can you see where those veins in the celery stalk have started bringing up the water? It's just a good way of seeing how plants do take water up sort of like a straw from their roots. But scientists have also discovered something else about redwood trees. They wondered how water would get up to the tops of the redwood, and what they have discovered is that our sequoias and our redwoods, when they're very big, they also can take in water from their needle leaves up on top. So let's see, we've looked at cones and we've looked at leaves. I want to show you something that you might be able to do at home. So let's see, I know I have it somewhere. Here we go. I have so much here. So let's see, I've got some violets here. So these are African violets. These are plants that don't like to have the leaves get really wet, but they like to get water from their roots. And I'm going to look for a nice healthy leaf, and I'm going to pinch it off. So I've pinched off a leaf. And I can grow another African violet plant from this leaf. I've got some potting soil here, and now I'm just going to leave. I could use the stem of the leaf to sort of push it into the soil a little bit. So I just have that violet leaf on there. I'm going to dampen the soil and put it out with the other violets, and in about 2 weeks roots will start to come out of the leaf here, and it will grow a new plant. Another plant that does that is jade plant, plants that have leaves like this. So a jade plant, if you pinch off a leaf and you put it on top of the soil like I did with the violet leaf, they grow new plants. Can you see that? No. This one has grown a cobweb too. So do you see how that plant is coming out of the leaf? It is growing a new jade plant. So I'm going to put that in the pot with the violet leaf. So that's one way that you can grow new houseplants from houseplants you might have already. So as you look at trees in your neighborhood, when you visit a park, take a look at the leaves and decide first if they are broadleaf trees, needle leaf trees, scaly leaf trees. You might look at the cones and you can actually identify the trees that are in your neighborhood. I love my Audubon guides, and I like this little book. This is a handy book to take with me when I'm going out to a park. And if you're at a park, a state park or a national park, there's usually lots of information on the trees and the wildlife that you can see there. So thank you for sharing some time with me. I hope this inspires you to take a closer look at what's growing around you. Be well, take care.